Do 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 do. The Predator, definitely one of the most anticipated movies of the year, and something I was confused on. Let me explain. So whenever there's a movie I'm really excited for, I dodge anything about it like the plague, because I don't want anything spoiled or some hype to get me overhyped. Well, more than an idea at that point, but in the end, I don't want to set myself up for disappointment. Well, I broke my own rule and watched a review by Stuckmann. Now, he's a great YouTuber who reviews movies, games sometimes. I even bought his book, and recently I unsubbed from him. Why? Because sometimes you stop being interested, but I do come back once in a while because I like his reviews, and he's a movie critic that I respect and trust. Chris gave The Predator a D+, and I decided to just see his rating and watch the whole review when I got back. So going into the theater to watch Predator, I was left in limbo. This movie looks great, but it got a bad rating. But all my fears left once the movie started, and I loved it. The Predator, directed by Shane Black, acts like the first official sequel to the first two Predator movies, and it's pretty much what you expect. Action, gore, and comedic antics that conflict some tense moments. But I'm not going to spoil anything about the movie. I know it says review, but it's more of a Panda talk.
You fucking suck!
But the film is great and worth the watch, so if you wanted the obligatory rating of the film, I give it an 8.5 out of 10. But my grab right now is to review Chris Stuckmann gave the film. So let's roll with the video and collect my grabs as we go. But before we begin, I must say for posterity, I do not hate nor have ill will towards Chris Stuckmann. I respect the man and love his content, and to prove it, I'll link his channel in the description below. Alright, let's actually begin the video.
I cannot believe how many bad choices this film made. It's honestly kind of a comedy on purpose, not even unintentional. There's barely a suspenseful scene. I think there's maybe one suspenseful scene in the entire film. It's Olivia Munn's character. She has to go through this decontamination process, and to do so, she has to take off her clothes because this door will not unlock unless she decontaminates herself. All the while, there's a predator wreaking havoc in the next room, coming closer and closer to her as she has to go through this process to get this door to unlock. It's probably the most suspenseful scene in the movie, and really the only suspenseful scene in the movie. This movie is just obsessed with quips and one-liners.
You say comedy like it's a valid criticism. While yes, the original Predator was an action thriller and the second one being the same genre-wise, genre isn't a form of criticism unless you go more in detail. Like, let's say you go watch Halloween and you expect it to be some sort of horror film, but when you watch it, it's some comedy that doesn't even touch horror. That's a different story, or the use of genre depth, which doesn't even follow the predisposed genre and goes into another direction. But you didn't provide such an explanation. You just said kind of comedy on purpose, which is just nitpicky and is a point that goes nowhere in the review of the film itself. You could have once again gone more in depth of the it's a comedy aspect and could have made a more valid argument, but here you sound not like a film critic but more like a random of the street that could have made the most basic complaint.
But in this film, it tries to do that. It tries to create another team of ragtag soldiers that are macho and put out cigarettes on their tongue and things like that. You meet them all on a bus and they all have a quirk, and that's about it. It's really hard to get attached to any of them. It's really hard to care about their plight because they're just constantly joking. They never seem like they're actually afraid. One of the best parts of the first Predator is that these hardened, macho guys that go into those woods with like, I ain't got time to bleed. Oh, really? You got time to duck? Like, those characters are terrified within 20 to 30 minutes of being in that jungle. In this film, they never seem afraid. They just seem very excited to fight the Predator and the super duper Predator and the Predator dog and all the other stupid things this film comes up with in the final few minutes.
Okay, so like, how are these guys macho cliches? Because these characters in the context of the film are being sent into a camp via bus to either be killed or God knows what due to doing stuff like shooting their commanding officers or PTSD. Well, I agree that these characters aren't that memorable. I mean, I can't remember their names. Good point on you, Chris. But you can't compare these guys to the soldiers of the original. In the original, these guys were macho men that eat nails for breakfast without any milk. But when being hunted by the Predator, become more human, and you can sympathize with them more. But in this movie, the goons, as you call them, are the antithesis to the original movie characters. These guys pretty much have nothing to live for, and on top of that, they have some sort of disability/issue. Hell, they even went with Canada to fight the Predator and to save his kid because they'd rather do that than go to a mental institute where they could be killed and such. So it's understandable why they aren't afraid according to you, and on top of that,
there are moments where they actually are afraid. If you want further proof, Trevante Rhodes' character commits suicide without hesitation when he throws himself into the ship's engine in order to crash the ship. All these characters are killed, yeah, but you do feel something for these guys. Not the most memorable characters, but you can at least sympathize with them. So no, these aren't the same characters as the original Chris. Neither are they goons.
I am massively disappointed. Characters who have never murdered someone in their entire life do in this film and don't show a hint of sadness or remorse. Yeah, sure, they're in a life and death situation, but you'd think for a second some of them would sit down and be like, oh shit, I just took someone's life. But no, that never really happens.
What are you even talking about? A majority of the kills are Predator killing red shirts and the protagonist killing the enemies. And if you're going to rebuttal with the scene where Rory mistakenly blows up a house, killing a bunch of red shirts, 1. The guy threw the rock at Rory while he was wearing the Predator helmet, triggering the helmet to attack back. So the guy got what he had coming in, when it comes to monster flicks. 2. Rory's established in the film having some sort of mental disability on top of him being a young kid. So yeah, it makes sense why he wouldn't stop and contemplate what he did. And with Olivia Munn's character, she was interested in researching the Predator and wanted to stop him from escaping. It fits her character and isn't out of the realm of suspension of disbelief.
Like they should have been made, but they just weren't made. And it really boggles my mind that with an unlimited budget and all of his talent, this is what Shane Black made. It's just a funny, cringy CGI fest with a few predators. It's easily the worst Predator movie.
A lot of the jokes stuck and weren't all that cringy. On top of the CGI isn't that bad, or at least that noticeable the majority of the time. There were times where it wasn't good, such as the Predator dog or some close-ups of the Super Predator, but other than that, the CGI was on point mostly. I don't think everyone just glues their eyes to the screen, scoping each frame for errors like that, but yeah, the CGI is fine and the jokes for the most part stick.
But by far the worst thing about the film is that it does not feel like it has a cohesive narrative. Scene after scene, it feels like stitched together moments where tons of things have been cut out or reshot or changed or altered. And it doesn't feel like the film flows naturally. It doesn't feel like there's a progression of events. It just feels like, here's a scene. Make a few one-liners. Oh shit, there's a predator. Let's joke about it because apparently seeing a gigantic alien is really funny.
By the way, the reason why it seemed cut or altered at some points is because of the huge controversy of the film, which was the hiring of a convicted sex offender in the film who was outed by Munn and his scenes were subsequently cut from the film. So that's why it seems like some of the scenes were cut from the film overall. I'm not saying you didn't know that, but it should have been said to give context to your statement. So it's here, and I'll link the article in the description below. Now, pertaining to the plot overall, the most consistent form of criticism, not only by Stuckmann, is the pacing of the film. For just say, it's an hour and 41 minutes, and for sure there are some down points, but it doesn't really hinder the pace of the film, and I really wasn't bored the entire time. It was a consistent enjoyment the whole way through, but this is the first point in which it's up to the viewer. If you thought it was boring or long, or, correctly paced, fair enough. Chris Stuckmann is a great film critic that goes in depth with his reviews, but honestly, this surely wasn't one of them. While there are elements of good criticism in his review, it doesn't make it so. This is more of a rant or vent video. If you thought it was as bad as you thought it was, it should have been a hilariosity review, where the ranting, venting, not a reviewiness is fine, because that's how you start the show to be. But you call this a review, and that is not what this video was. And I hope you can find a medium, because you don't sound like a critic. You sound like a fanboy with nostalgic lens. Anyway, thanks for watching this video. Like I said previously, I'm a huge fan of his. I even bought his first book. I really want to read the second one, hopefully soon. But I just hate when someone who calls himself a film critic gives a review with the same level and competency of asking some rando what they thought. I don't hate the guy, and I'm going to leave a link to his channel in the description below and get
Stuckmanized.
As for me, if you liked the video and want to see more, subscribe, and don't forget to click the bell to never miss any new content. As well, comment below any review ideas or discussion topics for future videos, as well as thoughts on this one. I read them all and appreciate your input. Love you guys, and Shamalamoomoo.